What happens when the very nations that kept France wealthy decide they've had enough? In the Sahel, a new alliance is rising, and it's shaking the foundations of French power. Welcome to the African Reset, where we uncover how Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traoré is changing history. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share this video with others who care about Africa's future.
The question, can France survive without Francophone Africa, is no longer philosophical. It's being tested in real time. For decades, former French colonies in West and Central Africa, countries like Mali, Niger, Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Burkina Faso channeled their wealth, currency reserves, and strategic resources into a system that disproportionately benefited France. In exchange, they were promised stability and partnership. But now, under the bold leadership of Captain Ibrahim Traoré, Burkina Faso and its Sahel neighbors are rejecting the old playbook. They are forming a new, assertive alliance and demanding genuine independence, militarily, monetarily, and politically. Today, we unpack the deep roots of this relationship, its consequences for both sides, and the seismic shift now underway.
The foundations of France's modern economy were partly built on the exploitation of its African colonies. As Le Monde Diplomatique notes, during colonial rule, France extracted vast quantities of cotton, gold, oil, and cocoa from its territories, often under conditions of forced labor and economic cohesion. Infrastructure like railways and ports was designed not to connect African communities, but to export raw materials to France. But the exploitation didn't end with independence. France maintained influence through the CFA Franc, introduced in 1945. As The Guardian reported, this system required countries to deposit up to 65% of their foreign reserves into the French Treasury, effectively placing French economic interests above African sovereignty. The result? Decades of capital flight and monetary dependency. This arrangement was enormously beneficial for France. As cited by Al Jazeera English, France gained reliable access to cheap raw materials, guaranteed financial reserves from its African partners, and strategic control over West Africa's monetary policies. Critical resources like uranium from Niger, which powers about 70% of France's electricity through its nuclear reactors, were secured under favorable terms. The CFA Franc zone also provided a stable export market for French goods, and French corporations profited from banking, telecom, and construction sectors across Francophone Africa. But now, that system is crumbling. And for France, the consequences are serious. The loss of control over African reserves weakens its international financial leverage. The expulsion of French troops and declining political influence in the Sahel also erode its geopolitical reach. Economically, competition from China, Russia, and Turkey in Africa is squeezing French companies out of markets they once dominated. The post-Françafrique era threatens to expose just how much France relied on Africa to maintain its global standing. For Francophone African nations, the CFA Franc offered some superficial benefits: low inflation, currency stability, and easier access to European investors. But the cost was steep. As reported by France 24, countries under the CFA system struggled to industrialize, suffered trade imbalances, and could not independently adjust their exchange rates. French companies dominated key sectors, leaving little space for local innovation. Now, led by Captain Ibrahim Traoré, countries like Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger are forming the Alliance of Sahel States, a bold move to reclaim sovereignty. They have expelled French military forces, proposed creating a shared currency, and are developing joint security mechanisms. This is a high-risk, high-reward strategy. On the one hand, these countries are asserting control and inspiring a pan-African push for dignity. On the other, the transition could bring short-term instability, economic friction, and retaliation from foreign investors.
At the African Reset, we see this moment as a generational turning point. For too long, Francophone Africa has been held hostage by colonial monetary tools, uneven trade deals, and a security model designed to protect French interests, not African citizens. Traoré's resistance isn't about nationalism for its own sake, it's about economic justice and structural change. His message is clear: Francophone Africa should no longer subsidize French comfort while its own people suffer from poverty and instability. And that message is gaining traction, not just in Ouagadougou but across the continent. But this shift requires vigilance. Breaking away from France does not guarantee success unless it's backed by strong governance, local capacity building, and honest leadership. African citizens must now hold their new leaders accountable, not just for removing France, but for building something better. The lesson here is profound. Sovereignty is not just about expelling a foreign power. It's about creating resilient systems, education, infrastructure, industry that serve the people. The burden of liberation now rests in African hands.
For France, the message is sobering. Historical dominance does not guarantee future relevance. If it wants to remain a partner in Africa, it must abandon neo-colonial habits and embrace genuine cooperation based on mutual benefit, not control. For Francophone Africa, this is a rare moment of clarity. Breaking free is hard, but remaining in a system that no longer serves your people is harder. The decision to form new institutions, currencies, and defense alliances like the Sahel bloc is bold, but it offers a roadmap for other African regions facing similar post-colonial entanglements. If you found this deep dive insightful, help us reach more viewers by clicking the like button, subscribing, and turning on the notification bell. The African Reset is here to empower the African voice with context, truth, and history. Can the Sahel Alliance truly succeed without French support, or will they face new forms of dependency? Let us know in the comments below. Your voice might be featured in our next episode.